Well, howdy YouTube family. It is Bold CRNA coming to you again with another day's topic. Today we're going to be talking about what the schedule is like as a CRNA. A lot of you want to know about that. A lot of you are tied in with nursing where you do like 3 12-hour shifts and you have kind of a set schedule like that. Anesthesia's not like that. Well, in some very rare places it can be, but that we'll get into in a minute. Let's go ahead and get into our topic. What is a schedule like as an anesthesia provider or CRNA? So, a lot of you guys are wanting to go into anesthesia and leave the bedside of nursing because of the work-life balance and, a lot of other reasons too, but a big part of it is you want to have a schedule that you can control better. You want to have more autonomy and ability to empower to control your daily, what days you work, what days you're off, and have that flexibility, which you can have as a CRNA. You can technically have that as an RN too, but it's a lot harder. It's an uphill battle to try and get that as an RN. It's typically going to be 3 12-hour shifts. They're also going to probably ask you to do a 4th 12-hour shift that week. They're always asking for overtime, and it's hard to do anything less than 12-hour shifts. If you don't like working 12 hours at a time, you're going to have a lot of difficulty finding a good position as an RN. Well, in anesthesia, you will work very different types of schedules. There will be positions where you can be salaried, which means you are at a set pay rate. So say you're salaried at $240,000 a year. Well, you're expected to work probably around 40 hours a week at that kind of salary. And that'll be in your contract somewhere, like how many hours they estimate you'll work a week. But say you're scheduled to work 40 hours that week, but you end up staying over because surgeries run over on Monday and on Friday, and you end up staying 2 or 3 hours over the normal time you thought you'd go home. Maybe they thought your surgeries would be done by 3 o'clock those days, and they went over till like 4:30 or 5, and then another day went over till 6. Well, if you're salaried at many places, if you're just straight salaried, then that's the rub, is you don't get paid extra for those extra hours you stayed above 40 hours that week. You just make the same salary that you already made. Now, the flip side to this and how they get people to agree to this kind of schedule is if you do that one week, whoever is making up the schedule for the following week, it has kind of like an unofficial rule that they will put you in rooms that should be ending early, let's say the next week, to kind of make it up to you so that you're not constantly working over your normal hours. So the next week, maybe you work, instead of 40 hours the next week, maybe you end up leaving at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday and you end up leaving at 12:30 on a Wednesday or something. So the next week you end up leaving a few hours early 2 different days, and that kind of counterbalances you. And that's generally how it works when you're working in those salary type jobs. Now, that does not mean, my first position out of school was like that. It was a salary job where it was expected that you worked around 45 to 50 hours a week, but somehow it ended up in this certain practice, and this can be somewhat common if you're not careful of the workplace. They had a schedule to where with the call requirement thrown in there, it was more like 55 hours every week I was working. So if that ends up happening to you and you're working 55 hours every week and you're set at a salary that's supposed to be around 40 to 45 hours, they're actually getting like 10 hours of free labor off of you every week. So your salary is actually not that great if you're working 55 hours a week. So now you're actually being taken advantage of, and you have to address that, and you have to work out some way that this is not gonna, keep happening. And if it doesn't, you can't negotiate it, then you leave the practice. So that's one way that salary can happen. Another way that CRNAs can practice at a salaried hybrid level, and this is probably, I would say, the very most common way you'll see it happen for providers and CRNAs specifically. You'll be salaried at a set number of hours per week, which is currently what I have. I'm salaried at around 40 hours a week. But I already know that my group has kind of an unofficial rule that you work, if you're full-time, if you're a 1.0 FTE with full benefits, they expect that you have the flexibility of working 44 to even maybe 48 hours a week. They do that because it's hard to predict when surgeries end. It's hard to predict when someone is out sick or vacations going on with other staff members. So they need all of you in the group to be fairly flexible and maybe pull a little extra weight here or there. And so they expect you to be able to do that. Now, the way they get us to agree to this and keep people happy is they tell you, well, we won't just keep you at your base salary of 40 hours a week. We'll pay you an hourly rate of everything you work beyond your 40 hours. We'll just keep up with that tally. We don't clock in and out as providers, but they kind of keep up with the tally on the schedule of like how many extra hours you worked, and they'll pay you that extra time on each paycheck. A lot of you are like, oh yeah, overtime, 100, time and a half, which is what you're used to as an RN, and almost everyone else in the labor force is used to. Anything over 40 hours a week is time and a half. Not as a provider, not as a CRNA, unless you work for a very odd group that just is very giving for some reason. Most groups do not do that. They do not give you an overtime rate. You may get paid extra above 40 hours a week, but it's not going to be overtime. It's pretty much going to be like if they took your, say they had you salaried at $240,000 a year, and they said that's for 40 hours a week for 52 weeks. They do the math on that and figure out how much an hourly amount of that 40 hours is going to break down to, and I don't have a calculator, but whatever that would be, that hourly amount would be, is pretty much just what they pay you each hour you work above 40 hours a week. So essentially it's just a continuation of your base salary, a little bit extra of that, anything you work above 40. So yeah, and that goes the same for like working a 24-hour shift. A lot of you guys, especially you guys in California, I practice in California, so there's a lot of California nurses here, and they have so many like really sweet laws that protect them from being abused, which is not something that exists in all the other states. And I actually worked as an RN in California, and I worked as an RN in multiple other states too. So I can just tell you, as an RN, you're not going to find a single better state than in California, because they have tons of rules. They have a rule here, I think it's if it's beyond 8 hours in a single 24-hour time period, if you work beyond 8 hours in a single day, anything beyond 8 hours as a nurse is time and a half. That's crazy to me. That is totally crazy. This means if you're on a set schedule of 12-hour shifts, which a lot of them are, you just have built-in 4 hours of overtime every day you work, even though you're just doing your normal schedule. Even if you just work 36 hours a week, you're making time and a half every 4 hours of those 12-hour shifts that week. And they're already making on the extremely high-end hourly rate for base salary too. Granted, the cost of living is insane here, so that's a whole different topic. But as a CRNA, that doesn't happen. You don't really get that. Groups will have you sign away that state law or regulation or whatever, so that they don't pay you that, because that would be astronomical for them to pay you your hourly rate plus then time and a half, anything beyond 8 hours. And then anything beyond 12 hours in the state of California is double pay. It's 2 times your normal base rate pay. And I like work a 24-hour shift. I'm gonna work 16 hours tonight on call, and then Monday in a couple days I'm gonna work a 24-hour shift. So I mean, the group would hemorrhage money if they were paying me 2 times my salary, anything beyond 12 hours. That you sign that right away when you become a CRNA at almost all practices. So they may pay you a base pay, like I said, a little bit above, but they're not going to pay you anything crazy like time and a half and double pay. There are rare groups. Before that one CRNA out of 50,000 jumps on here and says their group does that. I have heard that it has happened in some groups. But there's usually other detractors for those groups and reasons why they're doing that to keep people there. It's not the common thing to happen. But how is your week actually scheduled? Is it 3 12s? That's probably what many of you are thinking, is do I work 3 12-hour shifts and then go home and have 4 days off that week? Not usually. Again, there are rare groups that will offer 3 12s, but there's usually other detractors to that group why they're offering you such a great gig like that, because it usually means there's other negatives to that group that you're going to have to deal with if they're going to offer you that really sweet schedule of 3 12s. Most other groups are going to say, no, that's not conducive to surgery. Surgery doesn't operate on a 3 12-hour shift type schedule. It doesn't make sense. It's not patient care where in the hospital where you're just trying to schedule 24/7 patient care. So it doesn't really make sense to do 3 12s in anesthesia. What makes more sense is to have you work a flexible rotating schedule. So I might work 7 to 3, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Monday covering OB and doing labor and delivery, epidurals, maybe a couple C-sections, and being flexible on that thing. And then someone will come over and take on, someone who's on call will come over at 3 p.m. and take over my duties, and I'll get to go home. Then the next day, I may work 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. doing a busy orthopedic room that's going to have a lot of knees that are going to be done, like knee arthroscopies and stuff. And then you're going to do spinals and knees, and you're going to just crank those out all day long. And so you're going to maybe stay till 5. Then the next day, I might do an eye center day where the eyes are usually done from like 8 a.m. to like 4 p.m. So I may start my day around 8 a.m. and I'll probably leave at 4 p.m. And do a bunch of like quick cataract cases. The next day, I may do an overnight 16-hour shift where I come in at 3 p.m. and I'm the one who's taking over those OB duties that someone took over for me on Monday so I could go home at 3. Now I'm coming in at 3 and taking over the duties for them. So I'm taking over labor and delivery, and I'm going to help out with the surgeries. If the surgeries are still running and people are trying to wrap up rooms so they can go home, I'll take over their rooms so they can go home. And then I will stay until 7 a.m. in the morning, where I will continue to manage emergency surgeries, urgent surgeries, things the ER may need. They may call for difficult IVs or intubations. The floor may have difficult IVs they need help with. There will always be epidurals being needed. There will always be some kind of urgent C-section that needs to go at 2 in the morning. These types of things, they never stop, and there has to be a handful of you who stay, especially if it's a bigger hospital, a couple of you who stay in the hospital all night just to manage these types of procedures and emergencies and traumas. So I'll do that day. Then the following day, I may be recovering and sleeping, and I'll be what's called post-call, which means I'm sleeping and recovering after a long day. And then maybe I have Saturday and Sunday off. And then I come back Monday and I do it again, and then Monday is a different schedule. So Monday may be a whole different type of thing. I may do podiatry that day, and I might work 7 to 3, and then the next day I could be a breaker who's helping out and giving breaks and being a resource person. I might work 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And the next day I may be doing dedicated C-sections, which is 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So there's just a lot of flexibility and rotations with our schedules. Rare to get a set 3 12-hour shift in a row and get 4 days off. It just isn't conducive to most groups unless you just have a massive, huge group that can happen to facilitate that type of schedule. And another type of schedule that I should tell you about that a lot of people at certain points in their career prefer to flexibly move into is out of hospital type schedules. You could be 1099 or a W-2 employee for a group. 1099 means you are an independent contractor who agrees to sign contracts with certain facilities to provide services. And in that case, you have a lot of say-so over exactly what types of cases you do, what schedule you have. You know, it's very much you're like a gun for hire for anesthesia, and you're there to do what you need to do, and they're paying you. There's no benefits. It's just like a straight hourly pay, and it's usually a pretty high pay because you're not getting any benefits. So you can do that, or you could be a W-2 employee who, for a group that just staffs a surgery center, an eye center or something. Now these types of like GI centers, eye centers, surgery centers, dental, anesthesia centers, they're not hospital places. They're not inpatient. They're all outpatient. They're only going to operate Monday through Friday. Usually when you work in these types of practices, you'll do Monday through Friday, 7 to 3 or 8 to 4 or something like that. You're not going to work weekends usually. You're not going to work nights. You're not going to work holidays. You're not going to be on call. Usually you're not dealing with usually critical patients or traumas or emergencies. You're usually dealing with moderately healthy, although I will say the trend in America in the last few years for outpatient surgery has been that they've been getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So don't think that being outpatient surgery means you're just resting on your laurels, because you'll definitely have some tricky cases out there. But yeah, it's a little more structured. So if you prefer that more structured Monday through Friday, 7 to 3, no nights, no holidays, no weekends, no call, whatever, then that is a good environment for you to go to as well. Well, all right, I hope that kind of breaks down exactly what the schedule's like, what you can expect as a CRNA or physician anesthesiologist or most providers who are working in the anesthesia world. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. If you're looking to become a CRNA, sign up for the mentorship program. I do mock interviews over there. I also give out study guides, behind the scenes videos, depending on what membership tier you're in. Yeah, it's a great resource for you guys. Check that out. If you have not hit that like and subscribe button, please do that. That helps out the YouTube algorithm so much. Like this video, subscribe, because I post a video every Monday and you'll come back and see more good stuff like this. And That's Bolt out.